the quicker that you can compound that. If you were to take So welcome to the Ryan Magic Show. Today we're here with an old friend of mine that I'm reconnecting with, Coyles, who's an absolute legend. You guys got the bio. He's got an amazing bio. And I'm really excited to see where this chat goes. There's so many interesting topics that Calvin's well-versed in and modalities that he's across and just lives his life in a really big way. But the thing that's kind of jumped out at me initially that I'd love to ask a question around, something that I see as one of your superpowers, is your ability to be in your own corner. Now, I haven't been across your journey for the last however long it's been, 7 or so years, but even it's something that I see in you now, I saw in you then, and I really looked up to, and you looked up to this quality in you back then, and it really helped me get started on my journey. Because I remember listening to you speak on stage at the first time I saw you speak live, and I was in the audience, and you said something like, there was a switch that you made where you said, I really believe in every cell in my being that I was put here as a special human, a special being to make a difference in the world. And there was this claiming and ownership over the uniqueness and specialness and worthiness of yourself and claiming of your own power. And the biggest thing that I see in the world at the moment and that I work through, I think it's the thing that makes or breaks how I'm performing and functioning and how fulfilled I feel, is ultimately whether or not I have enough self-care or reverence for myself to be in my own corner. Where does that come from with you? How do you foster that state of self-love and being your own biggest fan? I really see that with you and admire that.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. And look, grateful to be here with you guys on the call, and it's just wonderful to reconnect. It's you meet interesting people on the journey, and there's very few people that stand out in my mind as much as what you have, and so I'm honored to connecting with you again, brother. I've always had a tremendous amount of respect for what you've done.
Thanks,
and I also just love the way you phrased the question. I mean, effectively, it's, how do you cultivate self-belief, right? But the eloquence of you putting that across is different. So there's a couple of answers that I can give you for it, but let me see if I can stitch something together. I think fundamentally in our lives, we all go through stages of competence and incompetence, right? Where we're learning and finding our feet. And that's with every new thing that you do. And obviously, if you do a lot of things well over time, it's easy to build up a bit of self-confidence as part of that. But I think fundamentally, there's a shift that happens in most people's lives. And it doesn't always happen for people, but if they're dedicated, it will, which is, I refer to it as the I can do this moment. It's the moment where you've tried a few things and then eventually get to a point where you go, fuck, I can actually do this. And for me, that's been around speaking in seminars and working with people. And I remember my first real I can do this moment was at the Tradewinds Hotel in Fremantle, Perth, Western Australia. I'd done my first business event. It was like a 2-day workshop. This is back in August 2013. So I was only a couple of months into business at this point. Wow. And I do a 2-day weekend. And on the Saturday, I did an enrollment for a program, and I made $30,000 in a day. Now, to put that into context, back then, the most money I'd ever made in a year as a uni student was $14,500. So to do $30,000 in one day blew my mind. And I was like, fuck, I can do this. And then my mindset at the time was, well, if I do that 3 or 4 times a year, well, fuck, I'm making a heap of money, right? Like 120 grand, that's more than I could have dreamed of. So for me, that was a real moment. And I look back at that moment, and that first 30,000 on that Saturday at the Tradewinds Hotel, I remember the moment like it was yesterday. That's more valuable to me than doing, 500 and something thousand in a single day or $1 million in a month or any of the money that I've made since. So, that has special significance. But the feeling and the self-belief in myself came way earlier than that. I'm a very spiritual person, as you know, and I know you are as well. And I grew up with a family that I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. And I grew up with a family that had a belief in spirit and a belief in almost divine providence and destiny. And that was cultivated in me from my family, and my grandma in the UK is a medium. and she received message from Spirit before I came to the Earth plane, and the message was that a young boy is coming, a child is coming to the world, and he's coming with a purpose. He's coming to make an impact in the world. He's coming to change the world.
Wow.
And whether that was right or wrong, whether that was true or false, it was something that she believed, and she passed that belief on to my parents and then on to me. And I've lived and operated from conception effectively with that paradigm that I was sent here and I chose to come back to be here to make an impact in people's lives. And I didn't always know what that impact was. I didn't always know what I was here to do. But after a while, the dots start to come into alignment, and you sort of connect the dots looking backwards. You go, okay, this is what I'm here for. And it was really the trusting of knowing that when you're in flow, when you're doing your mission or your purpose, and when you're making an impact, it just feels like that's what you were here to do, right? And there's things that you do that you enjoy, but it's not what I'm here for. The stuff for me is when I'm connecting, when I'm sharing, when I'm speaking, when I'm living in that bubble, that's where I'm meant to be. And you just know it. It's without doubt. It's for me the same experience of being in a relationship. When you're with somebody, if you have to ask, is this person the one? They're not the one, right? It's like if you're meant to be with that person, it's absolute. So that's been my background and story. And over time, I've had that many times. I know you've had the experience as well, Ryan, where your back's against the wall as a business owner, where it's like you've got to find a way to produce a result in this window, and if you can't do it, it's game over, right? And when you find a way of getting through those tough times, you remember, I remember being in London that time with a couple of $100 to my name. I remember being in the taxi on the way to the event in Melbourne with enough money just to cover for the event costs. We've had enough of those moments now to know that we can do it. And that helps me build, really a sense of supreme confidence. And over years, it's been arrogance, I'll be honest, right? And you've certainly experienced that from me. And I think you need a bit of that in order to succeed at times or take risks. But now it's just a deep knowing of going, I know I'm doing the right thing. I know I'm living my purpose. And the more I do that, the better I get at it. And it's just finding that sense of breathing into that, I think is very important.
Well delivered, man. It's nice to see you firing in your speaking skills. I haven't experienced them in ages. Good flow. So I think that arrogance is what people would like to be able to say, oh, my problem is arrogance. And they probably wouldn't say that because they judge what they wish they had more within themselves a lot of the time.
Yeah.
But for me, I find it hard to, I wish I want to be more arrogant. Like I want to have a little bit more Conor McGregor energy in me. And like you see it with the people that are most successful around the world, like Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
There's arrogance there. Yourself.
I appreciate that. And I think, I realized very early on, and I remember thinking this back when I was in high school, I was like, fuck, there's so many people that don't believe in themselves. And I think ultimately, I'm yet to meet somebody in all my work that has a really accurate appreciation for who they are and what they can achieve, right? They might know who they are, but you don't ever know what your potential is. You never know what you're capable of doing until you're really stretched and pushed, right? I mean, that's the nature of human experience. So for me, I think you have a fundamental choice. You can either choose to believe you're capable of less than you really are, or you can choose to believe you're capable of more. Now, either way, you're wrong, right? You're either capable of more and you think you're worth less, or you think you can do more and you're wrong. But I'd personally rather be on the side of thinking I could achieve 100 and only get to 80 than knowing that I'm actually capable of 50, but only thinking I'm going to do 20. And, the number of people that just don't believe in themselves, the number of people that don't have the skills to figure out how to do that effectively is chronic, right? There's very few people that believe they're capable of more. And when they win and they impress us, we celebrate them as heroes. And when they don't, it's tall poppy and we tear them down. But I'd rather be disappointed knowing I thought I was capable of more and fall short, because I'm still more successful than what I would have been had I doubted myself. So that's my mentality. If you have to pick, err on the side of abundance and go, I'm going to back myself, and I'm not always going to win, but I prefer to play the game trying to win than not to lose.
Yeah, I'm still, I want to dig a little bit more here to figure out like why you choose that, because it's your reality. You live this and you embody it. And you mentioned that belief that was passed on by your medium grandmother to your parents to you, that you came here as on a purpose, and you're like, whether it's true or not is irrelevant, because it's just like with belief systems and identities and this personal development frameworks, from my perspective and what Tony says, it doesn't matter whether it's right. It's just, is it helpful?
Yes.
And of course it's going to be helpful to believe that you're put here for a special reason, and to believe that you're capable of more. So how do you, like legitimate, because I'm going to put myself in student mode here. If you coach me on this podcast, like what would you say for me to adopt more belief in myself and start to play more? Because I see it every time I coach someone. I see this beautiful soul, but this pleaser, because I've got a lot of pleaser codes in me based on my upbringing and my strategies from when I was younger. And I attract most people, sweet people that have kind hearts and they don't back themselves. And what they need, I can see it, and it's easier to see than them. But I can also recognize it myself, is to be like, no, I'm going to earn more on the side of arrogance and over inflation. How would you instill that in me if you had to?
Yeah, it's a great question. So there's a couple of things that I would do straight away. Number one is, I think having, I don't believe necessarily in affirmations, but the concept of a mantra to keep things top of mind awareness really does help. So we know that. So, one of the things that I would do is just constantly have this question. And I'm a big one for sporting analogies, right? So I love sport and I love the
competition.
That exactly. And so, for me, I think there's a paradigm shift of going, am I playing the game to win, or am I playing the game not to lose? Right. And, ultimately the result might be the same, but I would rather play the game to win and lose than to play the game not to lose and lose, or even win, right? Like my mentality is I'm always offense, because I realized early on, and this is what I encourage you to look at as well, is that for anyone that's out there, when we traditionally are not going on the offensive in life, when we're not pursuing our goals, it's because we're worried that there's going to be a vulnerability or a flaw or a weakness that's going to be exposed, right? You think about that in a team analogy, we don't want to attack too much, because if we're weak at the back, we're going to concede goals. And one of the things I realized early on was, you know what? You can win the game 6-5, right? You can concede 5 goals as long as you score 6. And so for me, and Gary Vee talks about quite a lot about this as well, too many people are very critical on their weaknesses. I've got heaps of fucking weaknesses, right? So many of them. But I know that my strengths, if I play to my strengths, we'll still find a way to win. And it might be ugly at times, but ultimately at the end of the day, you can still achieve success in life by focusing on what you're really good at and being okay with tolerating some defeats in the areas that you're weak at. And I read an incredible book a couple of years ago, and this sits with me. I don't know why, sometimes you read a book and it just gets you. It's called Masters of Command. And it's a book about the leadership principles and the success strategies of Alexander the Great, Napoleon, and Hannibal. And Hannibal, a great conqueror from Carthage in effectively what would be today modern day Barcelona or Spain. And he was undefeated as a general in battle. And one of the things that they wrote was that he was attacking the Roman Empire. And the Roman Empire didn't engage with him. Instead, what they did was they just sailed their fleet across to Barcelona to basically sack the city, and then he was cut off from reinforcements. And the line that stood out for me in that story was, Rome was willing to lose where it hurts in order to win where it counts. So Rome was willing to lose where it hurts in order to win where it counts. And I find as though, particularly for that pleasing mentality, right? And there's another element of that, which is a perfectionist mentality, like everything's got to be good all the time. Yes. I really believe that people have got to be okay and confident with moving through obscurity, moving through overwhelm. And, one of my dear friends, and I know Simon Rawadi very well also, Simon's built a tremendous business with his wife, Yetta. And one of the things that he says, and I absolutely love it, he says, when the world's collapsing around you, expand, don't contract. Most people get to a place where they go, this is now the boundary of my comfort zone, and I'm feeling overwhelmed or stressed or anxious or pressure, any of those things. Let me retreat. Let me get a greater level of confidence and self-esteem, and then let me go back again. And ultimately, very minimal progress is made with that mentality. What we need to do instead is push through that, or at least sit in the fire. There's a poem from Rumi, which says, I don't care how much money you make. It's called The Invitation. I don't care how much money you make. I care, can you sit in the fire of your own truth and not streak away from it, right? So for me, it's about understanding, okay, well, why am I feeling like this? Why am I playing small? I think we all need mentors to be able to challenge us to think bigger, obviously, and just see what's possible. And then constantly aim to raise our own standards as part of that. So I know there's a lot of different anecdotal things in there, but to give you a couple of takeaways, number one, let's keep top of mind awareness of the life that you want to live. Right? Are you playing the game to win? Or are you playing the game not to lose? Number two, you want to surround yourself with people that are doing better than you. And I don't mean making more money necessarily, although that's important as well, but people that are living a more abundant life, And I'll give you a great example. The other night, my wife and I went for dinner. We had hit a major milestone in our business. We celebrated, and we went for dinner. And I posted on Instagram the dinner. We went to Nobu, the Japanese restaurant in the city and in Crown. And it's not a cheap place to go, but special occasion, who cares? Anyway, one of my friends messaged me and took a photo of the story. Because I'd ordered a spinach salad, and the spinach salad was $23 from Nobu because Ash wanted the salad, so we got it. And he's like, bro, you can buy a bag of salad at Woolworths for $2 instead. And then decided to post them 3 more stories about where do you get your salad from and tagging me in it. And I'm thinking, fuck, this guy is so committed to poverty. It's like, why do you give a fuck if I had a $23 spinach salad? So you want to try and surround yourself with people that go, great work, you deserve to celebrate that. Or instead, hey, let's aim for something even more than that, as opposed to people that are going to criticize what type of food you have and when you go to a restaurant. It's like he went in, he took a screenshot of the fucking menu at Nobu. He went and Googled it. No shit, like true story, highlighted. I think, fuck, in the time it took you to do this, I had a great meal and I celebrated success. So I think those things will certainly help. And ultimately, I would say that everybody, even people that are tremendously successful, are still playing within their capabilities. I don't think anyone truly ever knows what they're capable of. You hope you've got good people around you that can challenge you when you're thinking small. And also, very importantly, give you a pat on the back when you've done a good job and you've fallen short. That's very important as well. We often beat ourselves up for our failures quite a lot. So that'd be some of my thoughts for whatever it's worth.
Really awesome stuff. Thank you for sharing that. It was beautiful. I love the anecdotes and those shares. Where would you get people to start for the listeners right now in terms of finding their edges and moving through them? Do you have any processes or tips or like homework tasks that you can prescribe people right now? And I'll do it myself. And actually make progress.
Yeah, for sure. So 2 things. One would be to, sit down and actually look at, we talk about at Wild. So we look at 5 areas of life. So wellness, income, love, lifestyle, direction, hence the acronym. And then we've got a Wild methodology. So step 1 is a compelling vision. What do you actually want, right? What do you want in your life? And most people fail before they even start because they never set what we refer to as bold goals, right? So most people talk about SMART goals being, specific, measurable, achievable, attainable, realistic, etc., timely. They're all good and you need to have them. But, we didn't go to the moon because it was a SMART goal, and we didn't bring the Berlin Wall down because it was a SMART goal, right? You haven't created your success because it was a smart thing to do necessarily. It was because you just dedicated and committed and hungry and you were purposeful. So what we want to do is give yourself permission to dream without the pressure of having to make it happen. I think that's very important. The key success strategy here is, you've set a bold goal when you have no idea how to achieve it. If you know how to achieve it, it's not a bold goal, it's a SMART goal. And we've been conditioned for such a long time when we're going through school, where if I don't know the answer and I ask you, Ryan, what's the answer to question 6? In school, that's called cheating. In business, in life, in success, it's called mentorship and advisory boards and everything else that goes into it, right? It's called friendship and collaboration. So that concept has always been quite clear to me. But number 1 is compelling vision. What do you want? Now, a lot of people will come back from that and go, I don't know. And in some cases, I'll say fair enough, but most of the time I'll say bullshit. Because 1, you probably haven't allocated the time to sit and to write and to think and to brainstorm. Like amazing lives that are purposeful and brilliant, that it does not necessarily material success, but just a meaningful life doesn't happen by accident. You don't just have it because you stumbled upon it. No, it's fucking built. So taking the time to center and go, what do I actually really want? And part of that is what do I want, but also part of it's what's possible here as well. The beauty of social, if you use it properly, is that you can, if you're going to compare yourself, compare it to what's possible, and look at that as an opportunity to go, well, if that's a lifestyle, I want to have that lifestyle, and how can I go about making that happen? So that's step number 1. Step number 2 is then looking at what are the friction points for you getting there. And we talk about this in terms of internal alignment. So often that's beliefs, emotions, values, behaviors, and so your focus effectively. And so we can look at that, and we've got a heap of tools around those pillars. But what I would start with first and foremost is that most people don't fail. They just doubt themselves, so they never try. And so giving yourself permission to be okay with the worst case scenario, what happens if I have a crack and I fall short? And that's important. And one of the things that I'm a big fan of, and it's a very simple exercise, but will be tremendously effective for everyone watching, is what I call a Power 100 list. and I certainly didn't create the concept. I don't know who I learned it from, but it's effective. And that is to write a list of 100 things that you're proud of about yourself. 100 times where you've succeeded, 100 times when you've done something that you didn't think you could do before. And I'm talking as small as learning to read and write and tie your shoes or drive a car, or graduating high school, or getting married, or having a child, or whatever it might be, right? Like big and small, but literally write a list of 100 things. Because self-confidence is much like self-doubt. They're habits, they're skills. A lot of people don't fully appreciate that emotions are skills, right? Like confidence, the ability to have charisma or presence or self-belief, it's a learned skill. I'm not very good, not all tongue in cheek aside, I'm not very good at self-doubt because I don't practice it. I don't work on that. But I'm sure if I spent the next month really fucking committing to doubting myself, I'd be pretty good at it by the end of the month, right? So it's like, what are you constantly reaffirming and building on? And instead, how can we start to ingrain new habits of success? And so a part of that is going, cool, this is what I want, keeping that top of mind awareness. And, I remember something that you said to me fucking years and years and years ago, which was, what is one or two things that you can do every single day to grow your business and move it forward, right? It's like, launching an ad, running a webinar, doing a landing page, writing some email copy, right? If we just do one thing that is one investment into our future as opposed to where we are now, we'll have a phenomenal life. I mean, that's 500 odd things. If we do 2 a day, for the most people, 5 days a week, that's 250 or 500 things over the course of a year, or even just one a day, 365. That's a huge impact in your life. So I think there will be some things as a starting point. The 100 list is a great starting point. And again, surrounding yourself with people that are going to hold you accountable, sharing your goals with people, letting them know the life that you want to have. Success is a team sport. And if when you share your goals to people, if they respond with negativity or criticism or doubt, or, hey, don't aim for that because you'll fall short, it's a clear indication you need to start surrounding yourself with different people.
Yeah. Again, power, man. This is really, really powerful stuff. I'm curious because for me, you mentioned if you practice self-doubt, you'd probably be able to get good at it like anything. You can build that skill. Yeah. I've definitely entertained that and practiced a bit of self-doubt and gotten good at it, and haven't fully got back into the rhythm of action, because there was a certain junction point for me where I realized that I was driving from a place of trying to prove myself, and it was ultimately insecurity. And then as soon as I realized that, I felt a bit like a fraud. I was like, hang on, I'm trying to help people here. I thought I was doing this from a place of expansiveness, but it's actually underlying, it's a contraction.
Yeah.
And then getting back into flow, like I'm in the process of reintegrating from a more full place. Have you had any experience like that on your own journey where you realized that there was an element to try to prove yourself? And if so, how have you been able to keep the drive and the flow without your self-worth depending on it?
Yeah, for sure. 100%. And I think nearly all high achievers at some point certainly got started out of a feeling of, I'm not good enough unless I'm successful, right?
Yes.
So it's working to that point. And I'm not sure if there was a defining moment, but rather a series of other things that happened. So, when we first met, I was in a long-term relationship, and that went for 10 years, and I separated from my previous partner when I was 26. And so that was a real changing moment for me, because I went obviously from 16 to 26 with an amazing woman, and we grew together, and then we grew apart. And so I had to take a lot of stock to reflect on, why did that not work the way that I thought it was going to? And then, as part of that same process as well, then, now connecting with my wife and us going through that journey together, the woman I'm with today, Ash, is such a different woman than who I was with before. And that says a lot about, I think, who I've become in that process as well. And there was a sense of, breathing in effectively and just settling into, this is who I am, and I know it's going to be enough, right? I think, certainly, I know you'll appreciate this, that my mentality is, I'm going to give it everything I've got. And if what I've got is not enough, then that's okay. And it's like, cool, I'm okay with the worst case scenario. And getting to that point of really knowing and truly being okay with that is different to saying it, right? It's like you can breathe into that properly. That's a whole different place. And, when we got married, for Ash and I, we wrote a series of, it was like, not vows, but it was effectively like a pledge to one another. Commitment. Yeah. And on our honeymoon, we sat down, we wrote it. And one of the first things that we wrote was, we got together and we had nothing. And, at that point, I just left the relationship. My business had completely nosedived. I'd walked away from a business partnership, cost me $1 million. So I'm starting from effectively from nothing again. And this was in 2017. And the pledge was, we got together with nothing. And so we're happy to lose everything because we know that when we had nothing, we had each other and we were happy. And
Wow.
so when
cool.
we got that place, it's like, well, the beauty of it for me is I get to work with my best friend. We run the business together. We're in each other's corner, and every day is a great day. And so anything beyond that's a fucking win. But certainly, there's been times when I've been clutching at it as opposed to just allowing it to happen. And I think when that comes, it comes from a place of ego, right? It's about you trying to make it happen, as opposed to allowing and trusting the universe to make it happen, or it's already planned as part of that process. So I've really got to a point of putting the extra pressure on myself to try and make something happen when it's premature. It doesn't make me a better person. It doesn't put me in a better emotional place. It doesn't make me a better husband. It doesn't make me a better friend or a business owner. It doesn't make me a better human being. So if it's not helping any of those things, fucking stop doing it. And instead go, you know what? That's not an excuse not to put in the work. Fucking work. But on the same token, when you can go, I know I did the best that I possibly could with what I've got, then the actual work, most people experience burnout as a sign of this pattern, right? And we both experienced it. The work is not what burns you out. It's all the thinking and the bullshit in your head that burns you out, right? And all of the constant striving, and it's never enough. That burns you out. Working hard and putting in the hours is not exhausting. It's exhausting as all the mental chatter. So I got to a point where I realized, fuck, this strategy is just not working. Doing all this work and constantly trying to strive and demonstrate and prove, it's not actually getting me any closer to what I want. In fact, it's causing me a result. So at some point, if you're smart enough, and most people have that awareness, you go, well, fuck, if it's not working, I got to change the record, right? And I don't know exactly when it was. Maybe it was at the bottom of that time. But at that moment, it was about, for me, just taking a breath and being able to take some time and going, you know what, at the end of the day, it's going to happen. If it happens, it happens. And not every problem we can solve straight away. So at some point, you've just got to go, look, let's find a way to make best with what we've got, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. And I think all of that, like the summary of what I see the power here is that you're not putting your self-worth in results. You're putting your self-worth in you just giving it your best.
Sorry, bro. Just getting some furniture delivered. So they just rocked up at the house.
I was going to pre-frame to you as well. I could randomly get a delivery, but it's just part and parcel of being in COVID.
That's it. When you're working virtually, what happens.
Yeah. I was just, so this interview so far, man's really highlighted how competent, how your perspective of valuing yourself, giving your best versus getting a result is really such a powerful foundation that underpins your ability to then tee off and take a bunch of action, because you're willing for it to fail. You measure yourself based on your effort and not your outcome. And that's such a powerful fundamental. And you mentioned, if you're smart and something's not working, you'll change your approach. But I think what feels accurate for me based on observing you is, if you love yourself and something's not working, you'll change your approach. And with you, it's still that underlying fact that you're in your own corner. Like, people know what they need to do to get what they want. Most of the time, they've got at least 5 or 10 steps they could take in the direction of their dreams, but they self-sabotage. And in this case, because you've got that self-worth and self-love, like, no, I'm going to do what's best for me. And you're in your own corner. I really feel like that's the biggest, it's such a superpower. It's underpinning your success from an observational perspective. And so
all bullshit aside, I genuinely believe I'm a good person. I'm doing good things in the world, and therefore I deserve good things for me, right? Like, I've never had an issue. I know a lot of people in life struggle with a sense of guilt and worthiness of, do I deserve this stuff? And for me, I'm like, fuck, I work so hard, I deserve all of it and more. Right. And so for me, I've just been always quite clear about that. It's like, I work really hard and I deserve to have an abundance in every area of my life. I deserve to have an abundance in every area of my life. So I'm going to fucking go for it. And I realized that by filling my cup and taking that time for myself, and by doing these things for me, I make me a better person. I'm not perfect in that. I'm very hard on myself most of the time. But I also appreciate at the end of the day that can fuel me. And it fuels me to make more of an impact in the world. And I'm very rewarded in the sense of, economically, life has been very good to me. But more than that is the satisfaction of having people communicate back the impact that we've been able to make in their lives. That's what really fuels me at this point. But the numbers is great and it's a game and I love going after it. But knowing that we're making an impact is what makes it all worthwhile, because for a long time there wasn't the economic numbers to justify it, right? And so you have to rely on something else. And so I know that when I'm speaking to somebody, I'm connecting with them, I know I'm living my purpose. And I think that's the most respectful thing that I can possibly do with the time that I've got here. Because for me, I think anything else than using what you're here for, or using your life for what you're here for, is a fucking waste of time. So just live your best life. And if everyone does that, the world will be a different place. I'd also say as well, though, tactically, I mentioned the idea of, getting in your head, and if you do what's smart, it'll help you. Let's be clear. Majority of the time, these are not intellectual problems or even logical ones. They're emotional ones. And so I think there's a real element of making sure that you're also doing the basics and the foundations really well. Eating well, exercising and training, moving your body, doing some meditation or mindfulness work, putting in your recovery principles, good conversations with good people around you. And those things really do help. And for times when I'm out of flow or when I'm beating myself up, I know that it's just because I haven't eaten well, I haven't trained, and I've spiraled, and I've probably had a couple of late nights. So one of my belief systems is you're only 3 days away. You're 3 days away. Because sometimes it's like, cool, if you're carrying extra weight, or if you're not in a great place mentally, or if you're feeling a bit fatigued, it's like, oh, fuck, it feels like you're going to take a month to get to where you want to. And so my belief system is just 3 days. If you eat well for 3 days, you're going to feel phenomenal. If you start moving and training your body, you're going to feel all your body after 3 days. And that late onset muscle soreness will give you a sense of encouragement to go, hey, it's feedback that, hey, I did something. So for me, it's like you're 3 days away of connecting deeply with your partner, and the whole world changes. So that's not going to solve every problem, but certainly it's going to get you into momentum. And I find that carries you wherever you need to go.
Yeah, that's super powerful, man. These belief systems, because what I'm finding so far from this chat is like we're just extracting belief systems out of Calvin Coyle's head and just going, you can just adopt the same things. I'm curious to know, because those basics, I agree, are super powerful. You teach mindset, emotional, helping people move through their emotions, and some NLP stuff, and all your own modalities. I'm sure you've customized and created your own sequences and whatnot. What do you actually do consistently yourself in terms of mindset practices? Because we're mentioning you teach people at the start of their journey most of the time. You've been on this journey for ages. Are there any practices that you do from a mindset perspective that you keep doing because it really works and continues to work for you?
Yeah, a lot of recreational drugs. And I'm only joking.
Lots of cocaine keeps the high going.
Just coke and champagne. That's all you need. No, only joking. No, so for me, it's a great question. I find at times, in the pursuit of peak performance, you end up coming full circle, right? Like if you read a lot of really powerful, successful people's work, it's just the basics done really well long term. And sometimes, need to want to be the best, we forget that and we think, oh, fuck. But at the end of the day, Roger Federer, Novak Djokovic, Serena Williams, they all have the same tennis strokes. They just know how to do it better than most people. So some things that I come back to all the time. One, for me, from a mental health perspective, is just getting into the gym and moving my body. I always feel good in that world, right? So I'm not great at that in the sense of my pattern has been to prioritize work and ambition. And, it fuels me so much, whereas going to the gym is more of a chore as opposed to that. But going to the gym and doing that's very powerful for me. I know if I'm in a bit of a funk, doing any form of physical competitive exercise wins. So soccer, I play every week. Squash with the boys is fantastic for me. Anything that is a competition for me, I'm very dopaminetic, or high levels of dopamine effectively. It's a go-to drug for me. So anything I can do in that space really does help. But from just a basic principle, I'd like to meditate more, and I'm going to actually start incorporating it more because I know that we're trying for a baby at the moment. And one of the reasons why that's not working is because my lowest level of performance is still fucking high. So I need to calm the mind more to relax my overall cortisol levels. So I'd like to do more meditation, but I honestly don't do it very often. But one thing that I do every day, and it's such a basic principle, we've been through it with you before, Ryan. I know that you've taught it as well, as anchoring. So I'm very big on anchors, both and very kinesthetic on anchors as well. So I'm very big on those things. And that's down to, for example, like before getting on the call, I had misplaced my crystals I carry around in my pocket. So I've got rose quartz and citrine. I carry them everywhere I go when I'm on stage. It's always the same. Whether that be a watch or a bracelet, whether that be making sure that my belt is tied tightly, like just tiny little things that make an impact. In front of this computer or behind the computer, I've got as well the TV, and then I've got a variety of things in the office that are constantly reaffirming those things to me as well. And also some physical, like priming rituals that I do in the morning. I do cold therapy first thing in the morning, straight when I get out of bed, which is brutal, but fantastic for mentality. So there's a couple of things there, but there's nothing fundamentally different other than getting a good night's sleep, moving your body. And then obviously anchors is probably the most strategic thing that I do to make sure I'm setting myself up for success. And I'll normally do that every morning to start the day, but fundamentally, and I'll do it at any point during the day if I need to get myself into that space and into that emotional state. So
can you teach the listeners how you, like, what anchors are and how you do them with you've got the crystals, like what do you do on a daily basis?
Yeah. So effectively anchors, if you look at the I guess the training behind it is stimulus response. And it was created by a gentleman called Ivan Pavlov. He wasn't the first person to create the concept, but he was the first one to popularize it. And the analogy that he gives was that he used to feed his dogs, and he would ring a bell before he fed the dogs, and ring a bell, feed the dogs, ring a bell, feed the dogs. And ultimately what ended up happening was when the dogs heard the bell, they started to salivate. And so my dog Shadow, the husky outside, she knows if I walk past the door, there's a chance that we're going to go on a walk, and she loses her shit, right? So dogs are trained animals in the same way as that human beings are trained animals. And that's why when I talk about self-doubt is a series of patterns and habits that trigger self-doubt. There's also self-confidence triggers. So we can design anchors or those stimulants that create a response for us in every area of our life. You can have them visually in terms of the imagery that you see. You know, I mentioned before we got on the podcast about the tree, Ryan, that you have. We've got trees in our house as well. And we know that cognitively having trees around you, it reduces cognitive load and allows you to relax in your mind. So it creates an energy, right? So that's an important one. I've got in front of me here as well what's known as a boom jar, which is something that Ash gave me, where when we accomplish something that's successful, I chuck it in there. And if you're having a bad day, you open it up. I've also got as well in front of me as well, I've got a Kobe Bryant signed basketball, and I've got a bag full of like medals and awards and stuff like that as well. I don't have them all on display, but I've got them there. So it's a visual receptor or cue to say, okay, cool, this reminds me of success and accomplishment effectively, and that I'm a good person. And that's a good example. We've also got photos around the house from our wedding day, right? So they're visual reminders that bring about an emotional response of things that are purposeful. I've also got as well a tattoo that I got done in Bali.
Is that a Hum Brahmasmi?
No, it says warrior of light in Sanskrit. And so it's an affirmation for me. It's a reaffirmation of this is who I'm meant to be. This is what I'm here for, and continue to maintain that you're on purpose. So that's an example of visual. Auditory might be a song that you love, for example. Yes. Kinesthetic is anything that creates a physical sensation or feeling. So you can have stones in your pocket. I know a lot of people do that. A lot of women wear crystals in their bra. It's anything that triggers an emotional response. You can also have it with smells. I know that Jordan Belford does. We've got a boom stick. Yeah. Well, that's what happens when you have a Coke addict, right? And then he has to come off the Coke, and this is another way of getting there. But also, like, we smudge our house with sage or incense, or essential oils will burn as well, or Palo Santo. So that's a concept. But there's a variety of these little things that you can do. And the rule is, whatever you link it to, you should be done with intensity. So if you're remembering an intense emotional experience, you've just got to train your brain to go back to that time as well. In our seminars and events, we also teach what's known as precision anchoring, which is an NLP technique, which takes it a level further, and it's about designing what's known as a signature movement that you can do to be able to get yourself into a certain emotional state. So if you're familiar with Rafael Nadal, the tennis player, he's got a ritual that he does every time before he plays. So I saw him play in Perth a couple of months ago before COVID. And literally every time before he serves, he's got to pick his underwear and put his hair behind his thing. And he does all this. So he's got a ritual, right? The All Blacks have got a ritual, the haka. This is the reason why they're the most successful sporting team of all time of any code. Leighton Hewitt, when he used to win a point, used to do come on. So there's these little things that top athletes do to get themselves into state we can do that same thing as well. So I've got my own process that I go through. I've got a couple of anchors, but primarily one of them is that I'll use to get myself just into a peak emotional, physical state. And you imagine doing the same thing again and again and again for the better part of the last 10 years at peak emotions in people's lives. And that creates a recipe for success moving forward. And it can really be anything. Ash, my wife, she calls it potatoes to French fries. So for Ash, it's fist pump and then this. Jason, one of my head coaches, does a chest pump. I wouldn't encourage you to do that if you're a woman. Obviously, you have breasts, that's going to be difficult for you. For me, I visualize, just stand up, I'll show you. You've seen it before. But I visualize a panel of glass in front of me. I visualize breaking through that and then stepping into my personal power. And then I might say yes at the peak of that experience. Otherwise, I'll just do it silently. But I do this every time before I get on stage. And so we've done nearly, I'd say certainly 600, maybe 700 live events in the last 8 years. And every time before I go and do an event, I have a soundtrack that we play, specific songs that get me into the right emotional place. I do a prayer to the angels and to my family that's passed, and I have that conversation with my guides. I ask for a certain experience. I have that same process, and then there's a song that I'll play, and I'll fire that anchor, and I'll do that maybe 30, 40 times. And so by the time that happens, before I'm going on stage, I'm walking on stage like I'm 10 foot tall and bulletproof. And that gives me the presence and the confidence to be able to, do an event for a couple of days in a row and be able to be there for people as well and be truly present. So that's hopefully a long but short answer to the question.
Powerful stuff. Yeah, it's really, really powerful. So it's like a power move, essentially, like saying yes and making some kind of intense mood, like banging your chest or putting your hands up in the air, celebrating. You do that every single day.
Yeah, so we've got an audio track as well. I'm happy to share it with you, and you can put it up. It's a free audio track on SoundCloud that takes the client through 5 different power emotions and anchors it in. We've got some beautiful music in the background as well. It's a pretty powerful process, so I'll send that through to you. But yeah, great. I do it every day. I'll normally do it straight after I come out of cold therapy on the morning, and that sets me up for success.
Amazing, dude. Thank you for sharing that. I've got one more question that I'd like to ask, but before I ask the question, I'd love for you to, direct people to where you'd like them to go. Like, this has been such an awesome interview. What would you like people to do more with you, dude?
Yeah, well, look, anything that we can do to help people in any way, shape, or form, we're here to do that as well. So best places to reach us or to find out more about what we do is to go to social, right? Yeah, at Calvin Coyles Official on Facebook, at Calvin Coyles on Instagram. It's also at Wild Global on Facebook and Instagram as well. Or shoot me an email, calvin@wildsuccess.global. More than happy to help in any way that we can. Fundamentally, we do 3 things. We help coaches and consultants get certified and become NLP practitioners and life coaches. We help them then also build a business in the coaching space. We help people improve their lives in wellness, income, love, lifestyle, and direction. Probably a great place to start is we have a free life assessment that goes through all of the 5 areas of Wild and gives them a score on each area of their life, and also a series of action steps associated with that as well. I think it's like a 28-page PDF that's customized that they'll get straight away. So If they go to our website, wildsuccess.global, they can do that, and that'll hopefully help.
Epic. I always suggest that those that are listening in, just send a message or an email out to the person that's been interviewed, just saying what stood out for them. And it's always nice to get those messages. So just if they go to at Calvin, are you on Instagram a bit?
Yeah, at Calvin Coyles.
Yeah, at Calvin Coyles, and just shoot him a message and say thanks, because it's been so powerful. And if you embody and really give your attention to trying these strategies, you're going to get a lot from it. That's for sure. I've definitely got a lot of value today. So thanks, man. Before I ask my last question, I just want to take a moment to honor you, Calvin, because you really have continued to show up for such a long period of time. And I appreciate your vulnerability. I'd love to interview you again at some point in the future and talk more about relationships as well. It's an area that I want to go into, but it's been so full and potent in a really clear direction. So nice spot to end it. But you really have been showing up in such a vulnerable, open way and being such a great role model and example of what it means to really be in your own corner and then be able to overpour love and support and impact in the world because you're taking care of your own needs and you're really loving on yourself. And I really admire that in you. So thanks for jumping on, man. And thanks for being you.
I appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Pleasure. So final question is, if some random person came into the room, you didn't know who they were, male or female, You couldn't even hear their voice. And I escorted them in, and then they just handed you a briefcase with $1 million in it and said, all I want in exchange is what you think the most powerful, objective piece of advice, a tool, a learning, or something would be. What would you give them in exchange for that $1 million?
Ooh, fuck, a great question.
Thanks, man.
I would say to believe in themselves. I would say just believe in themselves. And I would remind them that most people fail in life, not because they aim high and miss, but because they aim low and hit. And that doubt kills more dreams than failure ever could. So just to believe in themselves. I think if the world did that, I mean, that's honestly, without that, you're not going to make anything anyway. But with that, you can make as much as you want. So it seems simple, but that's definitely worth more than $1 million, because without that, it's for me, it's the critical ingredient. It's just self-belief and cultivating that as much as you can.
Amazing, man. And that really is the theme of the interview. So it's
Yeah.
beautiful to tie it off. And again, you are such an amazing role model in that area. So thanks for showing up with that. Thanks so much for coming on today, man. I've had an absolute blast.
Pleasure. Love it, man. I can't wait to interview you on ours as well. So I appreciate the opportunity so much. And thank you to everyone who's listened in with us for the last 50 odd minutes.